All right, welcome to another episode of Fullcourt Passport. I am Ric Bucher. That is Bostjan Bostjan Nachbar. And we have the first guest in the history of Fullcourt Passport, Kyle Hines, assistant GM of the Brooklyn Nets, former player in international basketball. They define or describe his career overseas as an illustrious career. 16 years over there. I should have checked these details with you before we came on, but I believe I have them right. 16 years over there, 4-time Euroleague champion, 3-time defensive player of the year. Am I missing anything, Kyle, in terms of the illustrious career overseas?
I'm not one to talk much about myself, but yeah, I think that covers a lot of it. And the biggest one is that I'm the first guest to be in the
Oh,
history of your podcast. So I think that's the cherry on top right there. So
I'm
Yeah.
not going to say no to that. Assistant GM of the Long Island Nets, came on with the Brooklyn Nets last year as an assistant coach, and so let's start there. That is a unique step for someone to spend 16 years overseas and then step into the NBA as an assistant coach and get into the front office. How or why did this happen?
um, I'm still trying to figure that out right now. To be honest with you, the plan was initially, that I wanted to kind of when I retired. I didn't necessarily know exactly what I wanted to do. Um, Ideally, I was thinking to kind of take a year off and kind of, kind of get my feet underneath me, my family's feet underneath me after being away from America for so long, 16 years. Um, Basically, what happened, we extended out. Once my season was over, I was kind of contemplating back and forth whether or not I should retire. We extended out our vacation in Europe a little bit longer just for that. I came back home, and during the course of me coming back home, I received a call from Brooklyn, and they were like, "Listen, we're hearing that you're thinking about retiring. Come along with us to summer league, and as many people do, be a guest coach. Be a guest coach. Be around, see if you
Hmm.
like it, and then kind of see what happens from there." So I was there with the team for 14 days during summer league, and I really enjoyed it. Like I really enjoyed the staff. I really enjoyed everything that they had going on there. I had previous relationships with a number of different people in the front office, just from over the course of just people I knew and just they were through in my network. And like I said, I really started enjoying it. And then they had a couple of open gym plays, and I just kept showing up, and it kind of kept me allowed me to kind of still stay on the floor and still play and still be around the group a little bit.
Hmm.
And I think fortunately enough for me that the head coach of Brooklyn Nets is Jordi Fernandez. Jordi Fernandez, is a Spanish, big follower of Euroleague and on global hoops. So once he kind of knew I was around and knew that I didn't know what to do, him and along with Sean Marks, the general manager of the Brooklyn Nets, asked me did I want to kind of stick around for the year and kind of see what I wanted to do. So they kind of gave me a position as along with the player development staff, and I was able to kind of be on the floor and be around the guys and try to get an opportunity to learn the NBA, and then from there. Got this opportunity that I knew that I wanted to get into the front office, but I think last year I wanted to understand and really get a chance to really know the NBA. And during the summer, they asked me that I want to come on along as more of a defined role, and that's what they allowed me to come in and be the
Wow.
assistant GM of the Long Island Nets.
Hmm.
Awesome. I mean, it's definitely a great transition, and it's great to see a player that's been so successful in Europe to have that transition to the NBA. And I think one of the things that I want to add here, also for you, Rick, and for all the listeners, is that Kyle was also one of the first guys that stepped up when we created the players union in EuroLeague. Kyle has been a first vice president for 6 years, all until he retired. So him and Gigi De Tome and Toko Shengelia, who's the president now, and Marcelino Huertas and all these, older guys really stepped up towards that 2018-19 and created something that never existed before. So I think, My question here more is also like, you being part of the players union in Europe, did that also give you, and in what way gave you a better understanding of the business of basketball and all the things that go into, successfully being part of a league that is not just the product on the court, but everything that comes around it? Because I think that all these things at the end of the day also matter when you work in front office.
I mean, definitely. I think for me, I was fortunate enough to be able to join you, like you said before, in helping to kind of create this the help of the Euroleague Players Association. So we basically, were able to kind of create this from the ground floor, and
Mm-hmm.
going through everything from in the beginning, we were just trying to get members and try to get guys single rooms. Like that was our big
That was the big
argument was
one.
trying to get guys single rooms. That was the big one from up to when we finished, we were creating a framework agreement, or what you would call a CBA, and create the
Mm-hmm.
first CBA. So we went through all that within like a 5-year period. So I think during that time, it allowed me to really to kind of get opportunity to really know the business, really know what goes behind. To create a system, create processes, and then also allowed me to kind of really get to know a lot of the players, and I got to know them differently than me just playing against them. We spent a lot of conversations, me talking to guys, talking to them, about their different problems, about their different issues, about different things that they want, different things that their teams were doing or weren't doing. And I think that kind of opened my eyes to say, okay, well, if these teams are doing this, why are certain teams more successful than others? Why are other teams built differently? Why do certain teams do that? So I think that's what sparked my interest to want to be in the front office, or take the pathway of the front office, because I'm very player forward. I'm very player centric, because that's my roots. And I wanted to kind of be able to use my experiences and use the things that I've gained, through my career, to hopefully try to channel those in, and hopefully try to be a part of an organization, help add value to an organization that can help benefit the players and help benefit the organization as a whole. So yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think that me being with Alpha definitely opened my eyes a whole lot, and definitely allowed me to kind of see the game within a game, I guess you can say.
Awesome.
Who made the call from the Nets? Who first reached out, and what did they say?
So it's kind of like a pipeline. So it was a number of different people. So it all started out with first it was Simone Casale. Simone is the head of international
Yeah.
scouting with the Brooklyn Nets. He lives in Milan. Used to work for Milan Olympia Milano. So me and him developed a relationship, and he kind of knew what I wanted to do. Me and him were talking all the different times. Both of our sons were in the mini basket in Milan, so we got a chance to chat. So he told Andy Birdsong and he told Sean Marks what I wanted to do. So I received a call from Andy Birdsong and from Sean Marks, and from there, like I said, I'm fortunate that they gave me the opportunity to be a part of their great organization, the Brooklyn Nets.
And
I, I,
how
Go
different
ahead.
is it now? The opportunity that you've been given. I'm just wondering, like, would this have been possible when 16 years ago, when you first went over to Europe? How much has the perspective on guys who've played overseas and coaches and the integration changed from that time over the last 16 years?
I mean, I think it definitely has changed, because I think you look at across the board of the NBA, there are EuroLeague guys that are running teams. You can look at Trajan Langdon in Detroit. You can look at Anthony Parker in Orlando. There's prominent players and prominent people that are in prominent positions, and I think that's helped kind of spark the wave and kind of spark the change of like you said, like before, like the NBA is now more willing to hire people that not necessarily inside their ecosystem, to be a part of the organization.
Mm.
Like I said, now it's a truly global organization. Like I said, you look at our head coach, Jordi Fernandez. You look at other different coaches that are now international head coaches throughout the association. So I think like I said, and also former players. Like you look at like a guy like Mike Batiste, who's with Toronto, and a number of other different players that are EuroLeague guys or EuroLeague players are now in prominent positions. So I think those guys kind of trail kind of blaze the path for me, and have kind of allowed me to kind of be able to kind of walk into this position right away.
You mentioned, some of the different relations, or just relationship in general, how important it is. And I want to ask you about your experience in particularly 3 different countries that you played. I know you've been in, well, 4, I should say, because you also played EuroLeague in Germany first, right, with Bamberg.
Yeah.
So, just maybe some differences or similarities, because I think you played in 4 spots that are really different from each other, like small town in Germany, Bamberg, then Olympiacos in Greece, this huge fan following, then Moscow, right? Completely different environment, and then ending up in Milan. So couldn't be maybe more difference from the culture standpoint, right? When you're moving from country to country. And I've been a part of that movement as well, where you're moving from different places and different language. And how did you see all that? And maybe what are the similarities, what are the differences between these places that you saw when you played EuroLeague in all these different cities?
Yeah, I think the similarities are that they're all 4 of them were very well ran organizations. So, from top to bottom, you look at the people that run them, the people that are part of them, were all, some of the most renowned, some of the most respected people in basketball. Bamberg, I was very fortunate to come there. You played there. It's a very unique city. It's a city
Mm-hmm.
that is less than 50,000 people, but they're absolutely crazy about basketball.
Yeah.
They're nicknamed Freak City because people are like, freakishly love basketball. They care about basketball. So, it was great to be there, great to be a part there. Like when I was there, it really taught me how to win. They had built this kind of like program with Chris Fleming, who is now, I think, a head associate coach with University of Alabama. But they had built this program where they had made it where it was really almost like it was like a collective group. It was the first time I
Mm-hmm.
went to a place where I wasn't the best player on the team. It was the first time I went to a place where I had to play a role. And it taught me very well that, like, if you're able to play a role, if you're able to be successful in this role, then you're going to win games. You're going to win titles and win championships. So I always said, like, that was the place that kind of set me up and kind of taught me how to win. Because I was coming to an already established team. The team had already won 2 German championships, and I was coming in and kind of just coming to fulfill a role and kind of just be a part of an already, successful situation. And then going to Olympiacos was, for me, that was the first club I heard of. That was because Josh Childress had signed that mega deal,
That's right.
so many years ago. So I remember watching, NBA TV and, watching, when Josh Childress made that move, and it was like people were following him and, showing his villa and showing where he lived at. And so for me, like, Olympiacos was like, like the mountain, like to be able to get there and get to the play for that club and that, that city for me was like everything. And then I was going there at a time where they were almost like in a transition, and was able to play for one of the most legendary coaches in the world, Dudo Ikovic,
Yeah.
who's coached everybody, coached, Tony Kukoc and Vlade Divac and, I mean, so on and so on, all the great players. So be able to go there and be able to experience that and to win championships. We won was the second team in history to win back-to-back titles, and be able to play with Vasilis Spanoulis, who is, to me, I consider the GOAT of EuroLeague basketball. So to be able to go there for 2 years and understand and get a taste of what big time EuroLeague success was, it also just made me more and more hungry. And then make the move to Cheska, which is a totally different culture. I don't know, Rick, how many times you've been to Moscow, Russia. I know Boki's been there, but it's a totally different landscape, night and day from Athens. Athens is like I was living on the beach.
Yeah.
I was on the seaside. I was sitting back and walking around in shorts all day, and then I signed to go to Moscow, and literally, I didn't see the sun for 8 months. Didn't see the sun for 8 months, and playing in a totally different atmosphere versus the Olympiacos. The fans are super, super passionate, super boisterous, super loud. It's a totally different environment. And then you get to Cheska, it's almost like a theater. People are clapping, but they're not very that boisterous, not very that crazy. And basketball isn't like a big thing in Russia. But to get there and to play for a flagship club like CSKA Moscow, who is probably, still to this day, probably the most successful club in EuroLeague, allowed me to kind of grow up. And I was there for 7 years. So I was there for 7 years, and that's where I spent the bulk of my career. And then to finish up, to go to Olympia Milano with Coach Ettore Messina, where he was trying to build a program and build a team that had success for a long time. So he's basically starting from scratch. So that also was where I kind of got my interest from a front office point of view, because I watched him when he first got there was two different locker rooms. The American players were in one locker room. The Italian players were in another locker room.
Wow.
They didn't have meal rooms. They didn't have areas for families to sit. They didn't have a family room. They didn't have all these different things. And I watched him put all those things into place and put his touch on everything and everything he did. So I watched from the time I got there to the time I left, where it was like now Olympia Milano at one time was not in a place that you would get prominent free agents or prominent people. And then when you left there, now you get, former MVPs and former people that are looking to go there. And he's kind of changed the perspective of the club. So I've been very fortunate in that regard that every place that I've been to and every team and every club I've been to, I've tried to take something away from that. I think it's helped me learn and grow my perspective of what it is today.
In the midst of those 16 years, there was a time though where you were coming back and you were playing summer league. I think three times for three different teams. What was behind doing that, and just what was that like? Going and kind of adapting and assimilating to playing overseas, and then coming to summer league, which is, I'm not even sure how I can quite describe it, but it is. Like if NBA is kind of loose and fast and things are happening, that is almost practically off the rails in that type of game. And it strikes me as being completely different from what you would expect EuroLeague to be like.
Yeah, it's completely different in fact, especially now, or especially back then, where EuroLeague was very controlled. It was a very controlled environment. The coaches would literally, you would bring the ball up half court, coaches would stop you and say, we're going to run two. Everybody get in and we're going to run two, and everybody get into a set. And then, we're moving the ball around and we're not shooting to the last 4 or 5 seconds on the shot clock. Versus in summer league, it's like we're going. You're just going. The point guards are just going and you're just trying to catch up. And then also everybody is playing for something. So you go from this collectivism where everybody's playing for the team and everybody's playing for the win. And, it doesn't matter. 12 guys are playing. It doesn't matter if I get 5 points or I have 15 points. We're all trying to win. When you get to summer league, it's everybody's trying to get a job. So it's like, guys are playing, guys are trying to shoot, guys are trying to do all these different types of things. They're playing more individualistic. So it was definitely a shock for me. But I think, like I said before, I think it kind of gave me the opportunity to really understand and really know basketball, because I was able to kind of be in these two different worlds, immerse in these two different worlds. And then also the story of the reason why I was able to kind of get the job that I was able to get to now was because of Summer League. It's because of my relationships that I built in Summer League.
Oh, okay.
15 years ago, and this is kind of a short story, but 15 years ago, I played Summer League and I played with OKC. My coach was Sam Presti was there, and my coach was I played with OKC in New Orleans. My coach was Mike Malone, and because of the impression that I gave for him for that time when I was in Summer League, 15 years later, when it came for me to come to this opportunity, for me to get this opportunity with the Brooklyn Nets, there was someone my biggest references. They were like, yeah, he's a great guy. He's a great person. We followed him for a long time. So just from those moments in Summer League, I would never think 15 years later that it would give me the opportunity for me to be here today and be in this position today. So for one point, the basketball wise, it was totally different, but another wise, it kind of opened up the doors that I never thought would imagine would be here today.
Interesting.
I think that I think you've raised a couple of times an interesting or very important topic, which is relationships. I think not often enough players who are maybe in their prime or just coming up don't realize how important it is to really build a relation with these teams, with the clubs, with the personnel, with just players, opponents, et cetera, et cetera. I see so many times still now players who just don't dedicate any time to these relationships, and then later on, especially me working with Player Association, we get calls from players who are asking us, "Hey, can you help us? Can you help me build relations? Can you help me this and that?" Which of course we try to do to the best of our ability. But I'm also at the same time thinking hey, there's never a better opportunity than being a pro player and building on those relationships when you travel around the world, or you play in Europe or EuroLeague or Summer League, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the smart ones will do that, because that's the moment for players to build relationships, and then after the career is a time to capitalize on it. But for you, Kyle, how quickly did you start preparing for after the career? How quickly did you start thinking like, okay, I have this successful career in Europe, like, there needs to be something coming after? Was that the day that you decided to stop playing, or was it like a process before, when you kind of laid foundation for what you want to do later? Even though this Nets opportunity came maybe a little bit unexpected, but still, there's got to be a little bit of a thought process behind it.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely the process. I started laying the foundation probably after year 10 of my career, and I wanted to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. So I would literally start asking questions. I would just
Mm-hmm.
talk to people. Um, I was interested in media, so I reached out to Euroleague and I said, "Hey, Euroleague, I think I want to do media. Can I create a podcast?" They allowed me to create a podcast, so I basically used that as an opportunity for me to see if that's what I wanted to do. So
Mm-hmm.
I did the podcast part. We talked about it before during Vegas. I was interested in doing front office, and we spoke to the NBA PA,
Yeah.
and we're like, can we have some EuroLeague guys do the NBA Leadership Academy?
Mm-hmm.
Went to summer league, and during that time, up to that time, like every summer, I was going to summer league. I was going to summer league to just meet people, take a part of leadership academies, taking part of seminars, taking part of different things. Shadowing people, some of the friends and some of the people I knew that were former players that were in these positions. I would literally just go shadow them and just go sit around them and just to see what they did. I was interested in coaching, and I would just say, hey, I would try to go to different camps. I would try to do a camp overseas. I would try to go this person's camp, this college's camp. Interested in so many different aspects of the game. Maybe I was thinking about being an agent. So, I talked to my agent. I was like, hey, can I just, shadow you and kind of see what you're doing? So I think one of the things that I think the biggest mistake that players make is that when you're a player, everybody gravitates to you because you're a
Mm-hmm.
player, because a lot of people want to be around you. They want to be a part of what you do. They want to be a part of your gravity, your ecosystem. So take advantage of that. If there's different things that you want to do in the tech spaces and real estate and all these different fields, then you should do that because you're still a player. And especially you should do it even more being an international player, because you have even a more of a global platform. You can
Mm.
reach out to the people that are a part of your organization, people that are the sponsors of your team, people that are around, all these different places that want to be a part of you. So I think for me, kind of, talking to you and talking to other people, I did that very early on. I think,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I think that's part of the reason why I was able to kind of, be in the position I am now.
Yeah.
So, why do you think you were successful as a player overseas and wildly successful, and in so many different places? When you look at your characteristics or your approach, what is it that you look at and say, you know what, I think this is what I learned, or this is what I had that allowed me to do what I did?
The moment that I stopped caring about individual stats and stop caring where I was at is the moment that my career changed. When I started caring about the team and start doing it and becoming a role player, being a star role player, being a
And,
star in your role.
and when
The
and how
moment
did that happen?
it happened when I got to Bamberg, to be honest with you. It was the first time that I went to a team and an organization, like I said, where I wasn't the best player, where I wasn't the go-to guy. And I knew that the team was already good without me. So the only way I was able to play, I had to conform to the team. And I had to do the things that needed for the team to have to be successful for me to play. So that was like me becoming a really great defender, me becoming a really great screener, me becoming a really good connector, as far as like, doing the little things that matter. So the moment that I started doing those, that's when everything in my career changed. The moment I
And
started worrying about.
one, who was the best player on that team? And two, it's easy to say I'm going to become a great defender, and I'm going
Yeah,
to be a glue guy, and I'm going to do the little things that don't necessarily show up on the stat sheet, but that in itself is a skill. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, is that something that you had to develop on the fly, or had you already had that ability and it simply wasn't the focus of your game at that point? But first, who was the best player on that team if you were not?
So the best player on the team was the people from Stanford were recognized names. The Casey Jacobson,
Oh, yeah.
sniper, shooter, like,
Yeah.
guy, like he come up like he was in Germany. He was like by far like the best player. So, he was the guy. And then we had another guy that University of Dayton fans would know, Brian Roberts. He was a guy that came off the screens and was kind of the isolation player. So those were kind of like the two better players.
Okay.
I think it was something that I had because I thought in college I was a scorer, right? I thought I was a scorer. I thought I was a shooter. I thought until you get around other scorers, and then I realized like I'm not that good of a scorer. Like I'm not that that good of a shooter. Like,
Oh,
but
his
they're
bag's a little bit deeper than
yeah,
mine.
exactly. He has a little more, you know what I mean, a little more wiggle, a little more, just a little bit different. Like he can do a little bit different things. Like he can. So he's making like Casey Jacobson would shoot and just casually make 30 in a row. Here I am, making 6 in a row, and I'm like, okay, maybe I should set screens for him. So. Uh, so I think it was about me kind of being a little more self-aware and having a little more understanding that, like I said before, I think it was something that was innately in me, and something that I understood. And I think for me, like I'm a very curious person, so I always just ask questions. And I just ask, Coach Fleming, like, what are the things that you need me to do, and what are the things that I can have success. And very early on, I had a coach that, and I said this before, I said this a long time, and I always tell him when I see him, I had a coach that showed me Mike Batiste. And I looked at his stats and I was like, he's averaging 11 points, 6 rebounds, you know, maybe 2 blocks or something like that. And he was like, do you know how much money this guy makes? And I was like, no. He was like, he's making almost $2.5 million right now. And I was like, he's off of these numbers. And I'm coming from the States where it's like, you got to average 25
Yeah.
points. You got to do this. You got to do that. And he was like, this, I'm just showing you this because to show you that stats don't matter. He's the biggest contributor in their system when they won. At the time, Panathinaikos was the winningest team in a Euroleague. They had won 11 straight Greek championships. They had won 3 Euroleagues, and he was a major part of that because he drove winning. So the big thing, they were like, how do you impact and how do you drive winning? If you're able to drive winning, you're able to kind of keep a job as long as you want to have a job in basketball. So for me, it was about me understanding those. And once I understand those, I was like just trying to implement it. Now, I got fortunate that, like I said, I was in a position in Bamberg where I got that rude awakening early, realized that I wasn't a scorer, that I wasn't a knockdown 3-point shooter, that I was better off setting screens and playing defense and doing all the little things that matter.
All these things that you mentioned are so important for players to understand. Like, not everybody is a superstar on the team, right? So you now being first a coach, or assistant coach or development coach, and now assistant GM in a G League team, is that something you're going to carry with you now to the post career and trying to help guys to navigate through their careers and helping them understand that, hey, doesn't mean that you got to be the superstar on the team. You can still impact the game, number one, and have a great career, number two. Because I think that players that realize this early and they excel in these roles actually do have spot in whether it's NBA or EuroLeague. Too many times you see players who are just dead set, like, I'm the scorer, I'm the superstar on the team. And then if they're not that, they fall off.
Yeah.
How do you, I'm sure you're trying to carry that with you now in your career. And I'm sure that's going to help you as well as a front office person.
I mean, my goal and what you said it was, how can I help guys have a career, right? And I think that's the longest thing. I think the goal in all of this, and we've been around this business, for quite a long time. You guys have been longer than me, but it's like, how do you have a career out of this? The guys that last the longest, how do you have a career? You don't want to be a 1, 2 year, 3 year guy. You want to have a career. You want to be able to say, I played here for 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years. And you look at the guys that have done that, are the guys that what we just talked about, the guys that are superstars in their roles, that brought into their roles, that found the things, that found the ways to impact winning, the good locker room guys that are, good character guys that do all those different things. I mean, there's always going to be talented guys. There's always going to be, but what are the things that are going to separate you to allow you to have a long career? Like I said before, I'm very player centric, and I want to see all players make as much money as they possibly can for as long as they possibly can. So for me, like, that's been my thing. And even talking to some of our young guys, I'm always trying to preach that. It's like, it's all about how can you have a career? Look at some of the players that are in front of you. Look at some of the people that have done this, and try to mirror them, or try to look at the things that they've done positively and put those into your own career. So you said it before, like, I think, like, that's my biggest thing is, like, how can you have a career? If you're able to have a career, then, I mean, for me, then you're able to be successful.
Kyle, Listen, thank you so much for all of the insight, for taking the time. Wishing you best with the Long Island Nets. I know that this is not the last that we will see or hear of you. I'm going to enjoy. I know Boki will too, watching you rise up through the ranks. And at some point we'll have you back on when you're the GM of an NBA team and need some insight
Well,
into Euroleague and who you should be going after. We'll be here for you, and we'll have you come back on.
yeah, thank you guys. I mean, it was an honor to talk hoops with you guys, and honor to be your very first guest. A historical moment for me. But like I said, thank you guys. Thank you guys for your continuance to shed light on these different careers and different guys, allow people to tell their stories.
The monument, the plaque will be in the mail.
Yeah, there you go.
You were the first. Thanks a lot, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Take care, guys. Take care.
Thanks.
All right. So that was Kyle Hines, assistant GM of the Long Island Nets. The one thing I forgot in his accolades is also was on the all-decade team from 2010 to 2020. And Boki, he exemplifies like doing all the little things and how big those little things are in terms of building a career in sports, no matter where you're going to be.
I think you're so right, and I'll throw one more accolade in here. He's with Players Association, we actually named the most respected award, which is chosen by the players after Kyle.
No way.
Players actually asked for that in one of our General Assembly meetings when Kyle announced his retirement. They're like, we want to name the most respected players after Kyle. So that tells you a lot, and he's probably the best example out there of a player that went through the ranks, undrafted, played in smaller teams in Italy first, then got his chance to play in Euroleague in Bamberg, which is a small Euroleague team, doesn't play in Euroleague anymore, but it was in Euroleague maybe a decade or so ago. And then goes to Olympiacos, to CSKA Moscow, to Milano, like all these powerhouses, right? And while he's doing all that, he's gaining respect from teammates, coaches, journalists, fans, like everywhere he goes. So yeah, he's a pure example of a player that, and he said it many times, like, I mean, of course, everybody would like to play in the NBA and have that great career in the NBA, but there's more to it when you're a basketball player than just the NBA, and he's a living proof of that. Has done amazing things, and every time he steps in any arena in Europe, like he's as respected as it gets.
Wow. If I'm not mistaken, Bamberg is where Holger Geschwindner, Dirk Nowitzki's personal mentor and coach, is from as well.
Could be, but I know Dirk is from close to that area. But
yes, it's about an hour. Well, it's about an hour away.
Exactly.
I want to say Nuremberg, but I'm not.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah. But but Holger at some point played for Bamberg, and I know I know that the basketball history there, even for a small town, is incredibly rich.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to move on to. This is going to become a regular feature of Fullcourt Passport in that we are going to select, or I should say Boki is going to select a game of the week that we are then both going to take in. And this week's game, the first, was Barca versus Valencia.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, I'm just curious why you picked that game for us to watch, because it ended up being a great Barca winning 108-102, great game and dynamic. But I'm wondering why you chose that game for us to watch.
Simply because the Spanish derbies, whether it's Barca, Madrid, Valencia, Baskonia, are always tough, right? It's always a little bit specific or a little bit special when you have those rivalries inside of the country that they meet in EuroLeague. Then it was also the first home game of the season for Barca. So first time they stepped on the floor in EuroLeague at home, and I just wanted to see how they would react, and also because Valencia has played great leading up to this game. So preseason, all the Super Cup games, or early in the season, Spanish League, EuroLeague, like they played really good. So there was a lot of hype around Valencia team. Also because they they've opened their new arena in Valencia. It's beautiful, state-of-the-art arena, NBA style arena. So there was a lot of hype about that club in general in the preseason and leading up to this game, and that's why I chose this game as to look at a little bit closer maybe than the others.
Well, it was a good choice, and I apologize for Americanizing Barca and saying Barca the first.
Yeah,
first reference.
I need to correct you on that next time.
You were so subtle. You are so you. This is not the first time you've done it. You're very subtle. You'll just say it the right way and let me know, Rick. You're going to have to get up to speed on this. You're going to have to say it correctly.
For sure.
Thank you for that. So. What I found interesting is there were some well-known names, international players that spent some time in the NBA,
Mm-hmm.
Willie Hernan Gomez being first and foremost of them, playing for Barca. But I was taken by, like, there weren't really big, like there's some big names in Euroleague that NBA fans are familiar with. But it was the collective team, and there was as much talent that NBA or average American fans wouldn't know about. And I was really impressed with Barca having, like, they had everything, the balance of their game. I thought they had a size advantage on Valencia, and they obviously took advantage of that early. But they could shoot the three. They had some athleticism. Like, they had all the pieces. And as that game evolved, I was like, Valencia is good, but it always felt like Barca had something. They had another gear to go to or another wrinkle to take advantage of. And even though Valencia would take the lead, it was a matter of Barca could always wrest the game back, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the game did have that kind of feel, and you see that games, those types of games many times in Euroleague. That home court advantage is huge. The arena gets loud, and every time the team needs it, you get a little bit of that push from the fans. But I mean, you're right. You know, the FC Barcelona team, I mean, has so many players who have played or at least stepped on the floor in the NBA. Whether you mentioned Hernan Gomez, but he's not the only one. Satoransky had some good years in the NBA.
Yep.
Kevin Punter was in the NBA. Jan Vesely was in the NBA. Toko Shengelia was in the NBA, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, so on and so on. You can go down the list. There's probably a couple of more guys that had some kind of a connection with an NBA team. So the talent is definitely there. With FC Barcelona, the fact is that it's a new team. I mean, the core kind of stayed the same. Vesely and Satoransky and Punter and Hernan Gomez was there, but they've added more pieces. Will Clyburn, who is a very successful EuroLeague player, and Toko Shengelia. So there's new guys there, and this team is going to need some time to gel. I mean, now that we're recording this show, this episode, Barca lost today against a team in Spanish league, right? So that's what we discussed the other week, like how tough it is to play in EuroLeague, and then a day and a half later, you go and you play against a team that had the whole week to prepare and waits for this opportunity.
And
so they've lost.
You're their big game.
Exactly. So. It's a team that I think is still going to need some time to gel and to get going. But I think the game kind of showed that, right? The potential of that team. So, and it was an important game for them. They had to win this game at home. You have to, if you have high goals, you have to win these types of games like Barca won against Valencia at home.
That was their first home win of the season. Am I correct?
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where do you put Valencia? Like, how do you look at Valencia as far as that team's potential?
I think it's a team that's going to surprise a lot of teams. They might not be currently, let's say, listed as a team that would make the playoffs or play in. 10 teams, so 6 teams qualified directly to playoffs, and then 7 to 10 they play the play-in, right? So maybe on paper you're going to say, well, there's probably 10 other teams that are stronger than Valencia, but it's a team that kind of flies under the radar, but it can beat anybody. And I think especially at home, they're going to have a special support this year. From what I hear, games are sold out way in advance. So they're gonna have full arena the whole time, and it's a huge arena. I actually have to go there soon to check it out. I'm here. It's absolutely beautiful. All the players are bragging about it. So it's a team that has a couple of new guys, a couple of guys that have been around Euroleague for a while, and also a very exciting young player, Sergio De La Rea, who he's a guy that he's taking a different route than what we see from players. We talk about a lot about NIL and going to college. He's a young 20-year-old kid that has been playing great this season, and I wouldn't be surprised if he continues to get a lot of chance to play and actually goes down the route of having some big EuroLeague clubs trying to grab him the next year or the year after, especially from Spain. But I think we're going to be soon also in a situation where we're going to see, hey, does this guy stay in Europe? Is that an NBA material player? And I haven't had a chance to, let's say, scout him enough from that perspective to know that. But he's the guy that is turning heads, and it's great to see that young players are getting chance to play in EuroLeague, because generally coaches do not play young players, like we said before. And it's good to see. It's kind of like a refreshing kind of thing to see that.
Yeah, well, his name has already come up in NBA circles. Like he's on their radar. I don't know, to what level every team kind of ranks where they have players and who they're interested in and how much they're going to invest in going after them. But I know that certainly there are NBA teams that are aware of him and keeping an eye on him. So without question, he has that potential. I have to ask you, because this is a new arena, and this is where I'm coming in with the questions that I did not give you a heads up on. So in your career, what was the most hostile arena that you played in as a visitor? And where did you have the biggest home court advantage, did you feel?
Couple of different, maybe I wouldn't point out one, but it's been a couple of different ones that are tough to play. I always thought, obviously, playing in Belgrade is not easy. You play against Partizan or Red Star. I mean, those fans are incredibly loud and they support their teams to the max. And
what was the craziest thing? What was the craziest thing you saw there?
I was gonna tell you a story about that, actually, but not in that game. I mean, I'll just say that fans spitting on you is not the most harsh thing that will happen. So that tells you a lot. I mean, I had I hope people could see your face. It is true. But not that anymore. That I'm really talking, 10, 15 years ago. I think that's cooled down a lot. But I'll tell you a story where when I played in Turkey, we played a game, I remember to the day, against Beşiktaş, which is another team from Istanbul, right? It has huge following also in football or soccer, and has a smaller type of arena. Still maybe 5,000 seat arena. Not huge, but not extra small. And I remember I was shooting free throws at one moment in the game. Tight game, maybe a couple of minutes to go to left, crazy fans. So I'm shooting a free throw, and I could see from the corner of my eye something flying towards me. It's a coin, right? And it hits me in my shoulder, and it falls down right next to me. So it could have hit me in the head easily, right? Yeah. So I stop in the middle of shooting a free throw, and I look over to the referee. And referee just kind of, how referee has have hands up where you shoot free throws? Yeah. He was just kind of like giving me keep shooting, keep shooting. He didn't want to stop the game. He did not want to stop the game to upset the fans even more. So I was in shock. They didn't want to stop the game, and I just kept shooting free throws. So, but there's things like that. I mean, I've seen lighters being flown on the floor. I've seen, fans going crazy when referees leave the court. I've seen one time a cup of beer flew on next to me when in a game. So you're gonna see this
full beer. Somebody's throwing
like a cup of it wasn't a bottle, it was like a plastic cup of beer, but it was kind of flew, and it made the whole floor smelly from the beer, and they had to get cleaned up. But you don't see really those things anymore at the EuroLeague level, I have to say. 10, 15 years ago, everything was possible.
Do they still allow smoking inside the arenas?
No, not officially. I mean, some teams in some cities, maybe some fans will still try to light up at a
Yeah.
halftime or something, but generally no.
So
No.
my first experience of international basketball overseas or was in Istanbul. I was there for the 2001 Eurobasket.
Hmm.
And it ended up being Turkey and Serbia in the finals. And I had never been in an arena. I'd already worked quite a few years as a journalist. We were stuffing newspaper in our ears because it was so loud, and that was at a time when the vuvuzelas were popular.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
it seemed like everybody had that. It was like you were inside a beehive, and smoking was allowed. So as the
Of
game went
course.
on, there was this layer
Yeah.
that kept getting lower and lower in the building.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget, my ears were ringing for hours afterward.
Hmm.
And so, I was there for, Michael Jordan when he hit the shot against Brian Russell in Utah. And you probably know Salt Lake City, that's one of
Hmm.
those
Of course.
loud
Yeah.
arenas, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The stands are built straight up. That place can get really loud. Nothing, absolutely nothing compared to what I experienced in Istanbul.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
think like the Balkan region, so Serbian teams in Euroleague or Turkish teams, Greek teams, like they'll be the loudest when it comes to that. They're most aggressive, and I don't mean violently aggressive, but aggressive, right? So, and that those are usually the toughest environments. Even though I will say, like when I played with FC Barcelona, like our FC Barcelona still has a fairly small arena, very old gym, Palau Blaugrana, and it's been a project for almost a decade now to build a new arena, and there's always being postponed. And I'm not going to get into the reasons or the politics of it. But that small arena is very acoustic, and when it gets packed, when it gets loud, especially against some big teams or in Spanish league against Real Madrid, it will feel like a very hostile environment. Or if you're playing for that team, you'll feel great because you're flying up and down the court. So
yeah,
that'll be one example of a home court advantage for sure.
got it. While we're on the subject of Turkey, I'm curious because I just saw the world rankings for
Mm-hmm.
national teams, and
Mm-hmm.
Turkey was ranked 12th, which is up from, I think, 27th at one point. So they've really risen. But just watching them against Eurobasket and in the Eurobasket in the final against Germany and the quality of that team, I was a little surprised that they were still that low. What I don't know if you've looked at the rankings, but I'm just wondering what you think of Turkey being ranked 12th and the rest of the rankings, if there's anything else there that you think is either going to change or is a little off.
I've never been big on these rankings, to be honest. I always look at the last result of the Eurobasket or of the World Championship or Olympics, and I go by that.
Okay.
Because I mean
Okay.
but ranking is still important, for fans, for media, to kind of feel where each country kind of fits in, or to give them those the let's say the respect, whether you're
Yeah.
top five or you're not, or you just fell off, and so on and so on. But I know players don't really give so much importance to those rankings. So for
Hmm.
me, to give you an answer, I am still surprised that Turkey is 12 because I know these rankings go by certain results you get as a team, and Turkey in previous years struggled because they haven't made it to Eurobasket or World Championships, etc., etc. So they were not as successful. But if you look at the team they can assemble, if they're all healthy and ready, it's one of the best, right?
Yeah.
So I'm surprised, and I if we do see the team sticking together and playing together in the next big championships, I think they should definitely rise. Definitely in the top 10, maybe even higher than that.
Are Is there any concern that the players that are coming over and playing in the NBA, and I haven't seen it, I can't think of it happening to this point, that they are going to be more reluctant or less available to play for their international teams overseas, or is that such a heartfelt thing that we're never going to see international players sacrifice playing for their national teams because of their NBA careers?
First of all, I think every player is different. Every player is in a different stage of their careers.
Yeah.
And sometimes it could be an injury that you need the summer off to heal, to prepare for the next season. Sometimes you have players who have those types of injuries, but they're not going to care because national team or that particular championship just matters too much because there's an opportunity to actually win a medal. But the issue that many people have, including myself, is that qualifiers for Eurobasket and World Championships are played during the season, meaning that NBA players do not participate in them, which makes it a little bit odd because you don't always get the best teams, total best teams who would have the full roster. You never get them in qualifiers, and sometimes they don't qualify, and that happened to teams like Turkey or in the past or others, right? And it's an issue. It's problematic. But every player is different when it comes to summer, and I never look down on somebody who didn't play because of their personal reasons. Other than if players don't want to play because they're not happy with their spot on the team, or they think they should have more minutes on national team. Like these things I could never understand because it's a national team.
Yeah.
And if ever in national team, it's team first mentality. Everything else is secondary. So whenever players didn't play because of those reasons, I never liked that and I never appreciated that.
Is there a way around scheduling wise to have the qualifying games where the NBA players from those countries could participate?
Well, as long as we have such calendar where these qualifiers are played in the fall and in the spring, I don't see it happening unless, and I'm saying that with a big smile on my face, unless NBA would agree to, or NBA teams would agree to allow their players to travel overseas and play. And we know the answer to that, right?
We do. We do.
So no. As long as the calendar is like this, I don't see it happening. Which is a shame because qualifying games can be interesting, and some smaller countries get hyped up to get a chance to play against those big teams, and then you don't see that full potential of a qualifier if you don't have all the talent that you could have.
Well, you would think though that the powers that be, FIBA, whatever, would want teams to be at full strength, to be represented appropriately, and that you would have those players available to be seen. So is there the ability, if they wanted to schedule those qualifying games outside of NBA commitments, if FIBA would so choose, and why wouldn't they want to do that?
First of all, to answer your question, yes, it is. I mean, it was possible. I'm not going to say it is because maybe the world has changed to a point where you have to be constantly seen as a product. So if you only play in the summer, but then you're gone for 10 months as a FIBA competition, maybe that's not a model that FIBA wants or needs, right? They want to have more games during the season so that fans can continuously watch FIBA games. But if you ask me if it's possible, I'm going to answer it was possible because in the past, the qualifiers were only played in the summer as well. So that's been the decision that kind of disrupted the European basketball, right? I mean, also it happens with Euroleague players. Like rarely Euroleague players and the schedule fits the windows. We call them the FIBA windows, where the players can go and play. You still see Euroleague players who are either not allowed to go or who don't want to go or who can't go. And it's a continuous conversation we have as a player association, also with the league, on how to solve this problem and trying to give ideas and trying to push the league to find a common ground with FIBA on these things, because national team does matter for players, but not under the crazy conditions where a player plays EuroLeague game on Thursday and then plays national team on Friday.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done there.
I don't know if you saw it, but Luka Doncic with the Lakers. They have not had him play in any of their preseason games, and he's gone very limited when it comes to their preseason training. And the explanation was that because he played for Slovenia in Eurobasket, that it just made sense to limit what he's doing now because of the long NBA season. I bring this up only because we talked about it in a previous episode about the preparation that Eurobasket or playing internationally for guys gives them coming into training camp, that they are ahead of it. And I'm wondering, so when you hear that's how they're approaching it with Luka, does that make sense, particularly, and for me in this instance, coming into a Lakers team that is going to be so different, and Luka plays such a big part in that with a lot of different pieces around him?
I think you gotta weigh things, right? You say on one hand we have Luka, who had a very busy summer, and he didn't just play with national team, like he carried the national team probably more than any other player, right?
Yeah.
Like and then on the other hand, you have the preparation period, and how do we work together as a team. And I think in this case, I mean, it's obvious for Lakers, it has more importance that they give Luka rest and allow him to kind of transition into the season, and they'll see his best basketball probably played sometime around Christmas and then in the spring and so on and so on.
Yeah.
Even though Luka might go for 40 in the first game, who knows?
At any given time.
Exactly. But the point is that I think they're making a smart approach. They can afford it. I mean, they can kind of skip these few games, and Luka is a smart enough player that you can really add him to what you're doing, and he's going to run the show. So he's not dependent on saying, hey, now I'm going to need 10 games to figure out how I'm going to play with these players, right? I think he's one of the guys that you can really add him to any kind of roster, and he's gonna lead. So I think it's a smart approach, but it's something that you see in the NBA, but you don't see in Euroleague at all. Players who also carry heavy load in the summer with national teams, they start playing heavy, meaningful minutes in Euroleague. No, because every game matters, right? And every game is too important. So that happens only in the NBA.
From your NBA experience, how much does preseason and the preseason games and training camp, how much does that really matter in the big scope of the season and what your team's able to accomplish?
From my experience, the training camp and practices mattered most than first 3, 4, 5 preseason games. So the practice was important, right? Like I've seen players go hard. I mean, I'm talking about, from top to bottom, go hard and really, caring about the chemistry and different plays and defensive tactics and all this. But I've also seen those same players taking complete time off first, second, third, maybe fourth game over the preseason, just rested or played very small minutes, just kind of ran up and down, made some shots in the games, But then once you get closer to the season, especially last 2, maybe 3 games of the preseason, that's when you see the real rotations. And that's where sometimes as a player, if you're kind of on the brink of the rotation, you're either happy or you're sad because that 1 game or 2 games before the preseason, usually the rotation is set and the 8-9 players who play and the rest sit.
Yeah.
And if you're not playing in that game, that means you're not going to be playing on the first opening night. And that's a sad moment, or that's a tough moment.
Yeah. Well, this has not been a sad moment. The last hour for me has not been a sad moment. We had Kyle Hines as a guest. That was terrific. Boki, it's always great catching up with you and breaking down EuroLeague and the NBA and international basketball in general. I can't wait to hear what game we will be watching and breaking down this coming week. And there will be more for all of you out there from Fullcourt Passport. So, Boki, thanks again for joining me, and we'll do this again next week.
Until next time.